Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Seth.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right. We are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
That's right. It's a hot one.
Yes, now we're going to spend this beginning part of the episode talking about how hot it is because we are both uncomfortably hot.
It is uncomfortably hot, though.
But by the time this episode comes out, it'll probably not even be hot.
Well, it'll still be warm because it is summer still.
That's true. This is our summer series here, which is just when we recorded the summer.
Yes.
No
It's nothing special. Yeah.
Every episode is special, or none of the episodes are special.
I think the latter.
Maybe we're special to some people. I was thinking maybe one day we could have our Retro Rewind change out for the summer, or maybe for the winter, and we can go back to the Bawupa.
Our Bawupas, our buy weight pass. I had to say it out because I think there are people that probably listen to our show that have never heard us say buy weight pass before. Very strange. Probably if this is either your first episode or one of your first episodes, and you hear these two guys just say Bawupa all the time.
It's the old Bawupa. Everybody knows the Bawupa. Yeah, so maybe we could do a buy weight pass. If you guys want to hear a buy weight pass, maybe we'll do it for the winter. Or who knows? Maybe we'll just do it during the next time we record.
Just an arbitrary time we pick.
Arbitrary time, kind of summer, but I feel like we're decidedly midsummer right now.
Night
Perhaps
stream.
even, I was going to say murders, but...
Or Midsommar.
Midsommar.
No, Midsommar, that movie with Florence Pugh.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the horror movie, yeah.
I didn't watch it.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't like it. You don't like horror movies.
Not particularly. I think horror is usually funny. I don't particularly like horror, but I don't mind watching it with people because I think watching people react to horror is funny. We went to a escape room with my wife and I. We went to an escape room early in our relationship. It was not an escape room. Sorry, it was a haunted house. Very different.
Yeah.
We went into a haunted house, and she's like, "Oh, I like haunted houses." And I was like, "I like haunted houses, but I like them differently than other people. I don't particularly like being scared. I do like to see all the set dressings, though. I like to walk through a haunted house and go, they did a good job at recreating this mad scientist lab, and it's." Or maybe they didn't do a great job. Anyway, I like it in a very boring way, I guess.
That's fair.
And my wife would say like, "Oh, well, I like to go through them and I think they're fun." So then we went to a haunted house in Niagara Falls and they had the lights off for a majority of it and they were dropping things from the ceiling on us and my wife did not like it one bit and was very anxious. I would say she needed to leave, but we were able to get through it quickly. But she did not like it what's a bit mostly because it was very dark, and that's what she told me. But we haven't gone to a haunted house since, and so I've been very haunted house lacking. As I used to go to I wouldn't say regularly, but I would go to the more
regular
than once.
occurrence. You just loved haunted houses.
No, it was just like an occurrence that would happen occasionally. Now they just haven't happened in probably a decade or close to it.
I like haunted mazes because usually they're not actually mazes. Yeah, corn mazes. The ones I've gone to, it's not really a corn maze. You're just walking through a path that they've set up, basically being in a haunted house outside. But the one thing I like about them is they never quite feel like you're in a haunted area because you're surrounded by corn. So if you need to get away, you can just run through the corn.
Sure. I like haunted houses in weird places like factories.
Those are fun.
Yeah, or amusement parks, or just places where they normally aren't. I don't like haunted houses in strangers' homes.
I like the haunted houses that amusement parks have where they give you guns.
Oh, yeah, like the rides?
Yeah, there's the one at Lake Compounds is the one I was thinking of. Anyway, Seth, what have you been recently playing?
Recently, I've been playing Grounded. It was recently on sale for 50% off or 60% off. I don't know. It was
nice.
It was pretty cheap. I played the demo and I didn't hate it. And by demo I mean the early access, and I didn't hate it. And then I love Obsidian stuff, so I bought Grounded as I wanted to kind of see what they did since it came out, because it's been out for a little while now. I think Grounded 2 was announced, so it's been out long enough that they are creating a sequel to it, which to be fair is not necessarily super long time needed to be out there. But anyway, you play as a Honey, I Shrunk Myself kid in the backyard of someone's house, but I would assume your own, but that's not necessarily the case.
Could be someone else's.
It could be somebody else's. You end up there. You get dropped from like a parachute in a suitcase, and then you climb out, and then you're tiny, and then you discover that you're tiny, and there's bugs, and bugs are big in this game because you are tiny. You're about half the size of an ant. You're taller than ants, but if an ant stood up on its hind legs, it would be taller than you. So like ladybugs are pretty big. Those red concrete mud mites, the red ones, they're like the size of a cat. And it's a crafting game that you have to try and get out of being small, and you have to like chop down grass stalks to like either clear passageways or build structures. You need to be able to eat and drink, but unfortunately you're really small, so like the water that's plentiful is dirt water, which isn't really, if you've ever gone out into your yard and you just saw ponding of water and you ever thought, man, I should drink that, first, stop, don't do that. Second, it's gross. And third, that's one of the more plentiful water options in the game. So you either need to develop technology so you can drink it, or you need to find water from other safer sources like dewdrops. And so it's fun. You go through it, craft things. You have to watch out. I got chased by a spider, and then I used a ladybug for cover. So essentially I had a spider chasing me, and I was like, oh no, the spider's gonna murder me. And then I saw a gigantic ladybug, and I just ran past the ladybug, and the ladybug like just got into a fight with the spider, and I was just like, all right, sweet, because the ladybugs are really big, and the objective is really to try and thrive and survive with giant insects everywhere. You can interact with the insects, and I think you can interact with them more the more you play. I've probably played about an hour or so I wouldn't say that I'm super familiar with all the things you can do. I think you can eventually ride insects. If you can't, that's a missed opportunity. But yeah, so that's Grounded. It's a fun game by Obsidian. Maybe it'll go on sale when the summer sale inevitably hits, which I feel like it's coming around any day now. Zach, what about you? What have you been recently playing?
Seth, recently I've been playing Dalek Attack, released in 1992 by Alternative Software. I played the MS-DOS version thanks to ExoDOS. We actually talked about Dalek Attack way back in episode... I don't know, it was a Doctor Who episode we did back in episode 154. I just got in the mood to play some Doctor Who games, so I played Dalek Attack, nice classic one. You play as the Doctor, specifically either the 4th, 5th, or 7th Doctors, and you start the game immediately being chased by Daleks in a sewer. You're actually flying around on a little Dalek hovercraft in kind of a vertical shooter segment, and then after the segment, the game turns into a platformer, and it's a fun but weird game. Weird in the sense that you primarily shoot the enemies with your sonic screwdriver, and for people who don't know about Doctor Who, this is uncommon. The Doctor tends to not like to use weapons. Usually he tries to outsmart things, so using his sonic screwdriver, which is essentially a multi-tool, as a gun is a little strange, but it's just a fun classic 90s platformer, and I like the aesthetic of this kind of it was this era of Doctor Who where television episodes weren't currently being produced because Doctor Who was on its long hiatus from 1989 until 1996, and then from 96 to 2005. So it was a kind of a drought of Doctor Who content. It pulls from all these different like aesthetics of the 4th Doctor era, the 5th Doctor era, and the 7th Doctor era, and it's always fun to play Doctor Who games, I think, even if they're not great. If you like Doctor Who, you'll probably like Dalek Attack. If you're not a fan of Doctor Who, you can probably just pass on this game, but as a fan, I liked playing it.
Great.
Well, getting into today's episode, we're actually going to do something, and that is talk about an episode that we've had like sitting in our notes, and I saw originally this was slated to be episode 143.
Right. What episode is it now?
This will be 291.
So almost the episode that we should have released it. We should have done it for 280.
We should have. Or 286. But no, we just kept kind of putting this one off. I didn't personally have a reason to put it off besides I'm not super familiar with the game, so I didn't feel like I would have a lot to talk about, but I figured it was time to just get it out of the way, and that is we're talking about Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. Nope. Kingdoms of Amalur. Nope. I'm gonna struggle saying this.
That's why we never decided to do it.
Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning by 3-8 Studios. And yeah, as I alluded to in terms of memories, I don't have any memories of this game. I think I may have seen the box on a shelf, but I don't think I've ever played it. But I definitely, when I looked up the name and I looked up the like cover, I definitely remember seeing the cover. But I'll be honest, I don't know what I was doing in terms of video games at the time when this game was in production, because apparently everyone was hyped for this game and the game it was supposed to be tied into, and I don't remember anything about it. So a lot of this was new information for me. But what about you, Seth? Did you ever play Kingdoms of Amalur?
I did not play it. The only thing that really is that I have with Kingdoms of Amalur that I really have memories of is the fallout of 38 Studios, because I live in the state that we're going to talk about that had issues with 38 Studios.
Yeah.
And they were still issues when I moved to the state. So generally, when there's issues in such a small state, you hear about them. It's just how it happens when you live in in the smallest state in the union. Generally, somebody knows somebody who knows somebody.
Well, to get into the history of Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, we should talk about 38 Studios, the company that made it. 38 Studios was founded in 2006 in Maynard, Massachusetts. In fact, their original office was in the same building as a company that I used to work for, their original office. So I worked for a company based out of Maynard, and they were located in the Clock Tower Mill, which is an old mill building that got converted to offices. 38 Studios was located in the same building, and people I worked with remembered 38 Studios being in that building. And they were like, oh yeah, they were always working on games down there, apparently.
Oh, nice. Or a game, at least.
But 38 Studios was founded by Kurt Schilling. Schilling was actually born in Alaska in 1966, though his family would move to Phoenix, Arizona. From high school until his official retirement in 2009, he played baseball. That's kind of what he became best known for. He started as an amateur, playing for the Shadow Mount High School in Phoenix, and then with Yavapai College in Prescott, Arizona. Schilling's professional career came about when he started in the Red Sox farm system. A farm system is a network of affiliated minor league teams used to train players before they're drafted into the major leagues. Schilling would play for the Elmira Pioneers and the New Britain Red Sox before he was traded to the
Rockcats?
Nope, the New Britain Red Sox became the New Britain Rockcats.
Oh, why did they change the name? Did the Red Sox leave?
So in 1994, Red Sox pulled their affiliation.
They said, we're out of here, and then they became the Rockcats.
So yeah, Schilling played for the Pioneers, the New Britain Red Sox, and then he was traded to the Baltimore Orioles, where he would play for a few years before in 1992 he was traded to the Philadelphia Phillies.
He stayed with the Phillies until 2000, when he was traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks, and then would stay on until he was traded to the Boston Red Sox in 2003. Through his time as pitcher, he had a win-loss record of .216 versus 146, 3,116 strikeouts, and earned run average of 3.46, which are stats that baseball people would know, or at least appreciate, I guess.
Yeah.
In 2006, Schilling would decide to pursue a passion of his, video games. Now that he's got that sweet Red Sox money, time to make some video games. He had always been a big fan of fantasy games, but was frustrated with the designs of titles like EverQuest. He would go on to start his own company in 2006 called Green Monster Games, because that's original.
In his defense, he said it has nothing to do with the Red Sox Green Monster.
Oh, no, okay. It's a different Green Monster. He then operated as the chairman, and his uncle by marriage, Bill Thomas, served as the president. His initial hires had a pretty incredible pedigree. John Laughs of EA, industry veteran Brett Close, and EverQuest lead designer Travis McGeethy. In 2007, the company would rename itself from the Green Monster to 38 Studios, with the number 38 coming from Schilling's uniform. The company got to work on an MMORPG, hoping to become a competitor to the wildly successful World of Warcraft, which in 2007, that was a big deal.
Yeah, World of Warcraft was huge. In fact, at one point in 2008, they acquired Azeroth Advisor, a dedicated newsletter platform for World of Warcraft. So they definitely were trying to get in on that World of Warcraft hype by literally taking over a newsletter just for World of Warcraft. Now, the game that they would work on, this major competitor to World of Warcraft, was a game under the code name of Project Copernicus, and would be set in the mythical world of Amalur. 38 Studios would also bring on artists Todd McFarlane and R.A. Salvatore to help develop the art and the lore of this game. For music, the team would hire Aubrey Hodges, who previously worked on King's Quest, Gene Rosenberg, who would later work on The Witcher 3, and Duncan Watt, who would work on the music for League of Legends. So they had these huge names in the industry working on this game. The UI, in fact, of the game was designed by Irina Pereira, who previously worked on World of Warcraft. So they were bringing in people who were well familiar with not only fantasy worlds, but also MMORPGs. RPGs. Project Copernicus was pretty ambitious. It looked to adapt a free-to-play model with microtransactions being used to purchase things like cosmetics for your character or your home. The game would have been set in a fantasy world akin to the Forgotten Realms or Lord of the Rings, which did lead to Salvatore building this incredibly complex backstory. The world of Amalur was intended to feel quote-unquote post-apocalyptic but fantasy, with players being able to take on the roles of fantasy creatures such as gnomes, ogres, elves, or, humans. During development, 38 Studios would acquire the company Big Huge Games in 2009. Big Huge Games had previously been involved in the development of one of my favorite games, Rise of Nations, a real-time strategy game published by Microsoft in 2003. As part of the acquisition, 38 planned to develop a sequel to Rise of Nations called Rise of Nations Tactics, but this ultimately never came to fruition.
Big Huge Games at the time had a prototype that they were in development of, which 38 Studios realized may be a good way to introduce players to the world of Amalur. Thus, the prototype from Big Huge was reworked to be a tie-in project. Shortly after this, 38 would leave their home in Maynard and move to Providence, Rhode Island after they secured a $75 million loan from the state of Rhode Island as a part of an effort from Rhode Island government to boost their tech sector. And Rhode Island, as a government, tends to do silly things like this, with there's like a lot of good thought behind it, but maybe not great execution. The tie-in game, now called Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, would be completed by the team from Big Huge Games, with one member of the team commenting that they felt they had a lot of freedom in terms of creativity. The gameplay and technical aspects of the prototype were retained, and the only changes being made to the lore and design to match the aesthetic that Salvatore and McFarlane had created, which were both taking on roles in the story and art for the project. And there could be a lot of comments about what different things 38 Studios happened, but Kurt Schilling put together a really good team.
It's an amazing team, and like I said, these are people that had a ton of experience either in the field of video games or in the genre of fantasy. I mean, R.A. Salvatore was a huge name and still is a huge name in Dungeons & Dragons novels. He's also a Massachusetts native, so it probably wasn't hard to loop him into a Massachusetts project. And Todd McFarlane, also huge name, and still is a big name in art and art design and such. In having these people involved, it gave, I think, 38 Studios a lot of credibility, saying we're going to put together this big game. Look at all these people that we have working on it. And you see these big names and you're like, yeah, of course you're going to put together a huge game. Like, there's nothing you guys can't do. Now, the game that they would put out, Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, would be an action role-playing game where you play as the Fateless One and explore a realm called the Feylands. You customize the character's gender, race, and appearance, with different fantasy races having different attributes and boosts depending on the deity they're aligned with. During the game, you explore the world, complete quests, talk to NPCs, and fight enemies in a real-time combat system. While the story is set in the world of Amalur, the Feylands serve as the primary setting, being a large area separated by a river into two territories. The land is home to the immortal Fey of the Summer and Winter Courts, who represent life and decay. Humans and gnomes are recent arrivals to the Feylands and are at conflict with a hostile group of Winter Fey called Tuatha Doen. Your character, the Fateless One, is actually someone who dies and is brought back to life from the Well of Souls, a construction of the gnomes, and your character suffers from amnesia because they were resurrected. So that's kind of the explanation why your character has to learn all these new things, is because they were just dead. And now they're back. They don't have any memory, which I think is a fun way of setting up your character learning about the world that you're exploring. It's kind of like how Fallout New Vegas did it, where you get shot in the head.
That's fair, yeah.
Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning would be released in 2012, and it sold fairly well. 400,000 copies were sold within its first 2 months. By July, over 1.3 million copies had sold. The game also scored really well. IGN gave it 9 out of 10, EGM gave it 8.5 out of 10, and one of the lower scores from GameSpot was just a 7.5 out of 10. So even at the lower end, it was still scoring fairly well, still passing grade.
However, Despite the sales and good reception, the game failed to break even. 38 Studios would struggle and soon default on their loan to the Rhode Island government. Things didn't get better when Rhode Island Governor Lincoln Chafee made negative comments about the company publicly in regards to the loan. 38 Studios tried to sell Project Copernicus to Sony, but they turned it down. By June 2012, 38 Studios would let go almost all of its employees, halt development on Project Copernicus, and file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The company assets, including the Amalur IP, were taken by the Rhode Island state government. Rhode Island did not get into the game business, though that would have been very funny and sometimes attuned to the state and what they do, because they are very strange.
Can you imagine if Rhode Island's like, we gotta complete this game, we gotta make back our money?
Wouldn't put it past them. They instead put the IP up for auction, and THQ Nordic would acquire the rights. However, the process would take a while, and the initial auction went up in 2013, and THQ didn't get the rights until 2018. During this time, 38 Studios technically still operated with a single employee, Jeff Easley, who basically just kept Project Copernicus running. The Rhode Island Attorney General's Office, U.S. Attorney's Office, Providence Police, FBI, and Rhode Island State Police would launch an investigation into how 38 Studios was able to get approval from the loan from the state of Rhode Island in the first place, leading Lincoln Chafee to ask for an outside firm to audit the company. And I guarantee you, it was probably because he knew somebody.
Somebody knew somebody. The state legislature would end up passing a law to protect anyone associated with the loan and its later legal issues from prosecutions if the company were to settle.
How convenient.
No criminal charges would be filed by the conclusion of the case in 2016. A civil suit, however, was launched by the state of Rhode Island against Schilling and assorted other people associated with 38 Studios, with the parties settling for $61 million. Though, following all the settlements, Rhode Island still had $38 million debt from everything that happened. So Rhode Island still lost money out on everything.
And yeah, and it ended up being, even though Lincoln Chafee started it, Gino Raimondo had to finish it.
Well, following the closure of the studio, Curt Schilling, who had already been a pretty prominent voice in conservative media, would go on to not continue his life in video games, but instead join Breitbart News in 2016. He briefly entered the political scene, running against Senator Elizabeth Warren in the 2018 Senate election, but would drop out to support Shiva Ayyadurai in his bid for the Senate seat. In the years since, Schilling has been a controversial figure, to say the least. He has occasionally made comments on the internet that have gotten him negative attention. So, needless to say, Schilling is a figure that has some opinions that he likes to make known very prominently on the internet. In 2020, Kingdoms of Amalur would return as Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning, which was released by THQ Nordic. This would be a remaster of Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning for PS4, Windows, Xbox One, and in 2021 would come to the Switch with the entire game fitting on a Switch cartridge, which was kind of impressive. And yeah, that would basically be it. 38 Studios did not put out anything else. Their only game that they released was Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. Nothing has ever come of Project Copernicus. Nothing ever came of their Rise of Nation potential sequel, Rise of Nation Tactics, and they would just be kind of an interesting little blip on the history of video games. I would be curious to see if THQ ever decides to revise any of the Amalur IP at any point. Apparently Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning is a pretty positively received game on Steam. It's got mostly positive reviews, so who knows, maybe, I mean, they own the IP, they can do whatever they want with it, so who knows, maybe we'll get a Amalur 2 or Project Copernicus revised. Well, that being said, we're going to get into our retro rewinds. Seth had me play Truxton for the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive. Developed in 1988 by Talplin and published by Taito, Truxton is a vertical shooter where you pilot a ship and you shoot other ships and other things, such as like cannons and stuff. There's really not much to say. It's a pretty straightforward game. You fly a ship, you collect power-ups, you shoot like electricity, you can like chain your power-ups and stuff like that, so you can like increase your power-up so it's just one laser bolt to like multiple laser bolts to like a whole swarm of laser bolts, and if you get like electricity, it'll be like a one chain of electricity to multiple chains of electricity to like crazy amounts of electricity. It's a fun game. I love Truxton. It's a fast-paced shooter. It just plays nice. It has great music. Definitely holds up, 100%. Seth, next week I want you to play a vertical shooter. I want you to play Zero Wing for the Sega Mega Drive.
Great. I'm looking forward to playing that. Zach had me play Snake's Revenge, developed by Konami and published by Ultra Games in North America and Konami in the EU. The American release came out in 1990, with the EU release happening the following year. In it, you play as Snake, and you make from Metal Gear, just in case anyone was wondering.
You're not just playing as the Snake from the Nokia Snake game?
That's what I originally thought the game was going to be, and then it booted up and I was Snake from Metal Gear. And in Snake's Revenge, you play as Snake. You make your way through various levels like jungle warehouses, cargo ships, and trains, and you get a pistol and a knife to make your way through the world sneakily. The sneakily parts of the game are a little difficult for me, as they are just completely black, and there's little circles that have like the map that you can see under it and moving around like spotlights, and if you walk into those areas, you get seen and all the lights come on and all the bad guys come out. But if you don't walk into those areas, you have no idea where you're going. This game is interesting because it's also kind of a sequel to Metal Gear. I think we talked about this back in our Metal Gear episode 85 with Matt Super Gainsborough. Metal Gear, the original Metal Gear, was released on the MSX2 in 1987. Konami decided to produce a sequel without Hideo Kojima, which was the game Zach had me play, the Konami game without Hideo Kojima, Snake's Revenge, also known as Snake's Revenge Metal Gear 2, but nobody calls it that. However, Hideo Kojima was on a train and he was hanging out with one of his peers, and they were talking about Snake's Revenge, and they were like, why don't you make a sequel to Metal Gear? You should make a sequel to Metal Gear. Look at, they made a sequel to Metal Gear. You should make a real sequel to Metal Gear. So Hideo Kojima created a second game because of Snake's Revenge and released it on the MX2 in Japan called Metal Gear 2. Solid Snake. And originally, Hideo Kojima wanted to just call it Solid Snake, kind of like Indiana Jones. But the people at Konami who decide on those things said, no, you need to put Metal Gear there in front of it so that we know it's a Metal Gear game. So if you want to hear more about Metal Gear and the interesting way that the games unfold and the various different spin-offs and all of that, go back to listen to episode 85. Matt does a really good job at explaining all of that. Ultimately, the game is okay. Or as Hideo Kojima said jokingly, somewhat of a crappy game. It's not bad, it's not good, it just is. Anyway, maybe one day Zach will have me play Hideo Kojima's game on the MX2. Anyway, next week, Zach, you could play Super Adventure Island for the SNES.
Great, I will. Well, thank you everyone for listening to today's episode. If you ever had a chance to play Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning or Re-Reckoning, let us know. You can do so by emailing us at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. We're available wherever podcasts can be found, be it Podbean, iTunes, or iHeartRadio. We're also available on various social medias. You can look us up, Classic Gaming Brothers or CG Brothers Pod. We're available on our website, www.classicgamingbrothers.com. And with that, Seth, am I forgetting anything?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
That's right.